Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
November 16, 2020, a Reckoning for Jones Day edition. And we'll just start with that story from AboveThe Law, who got a hold of some internal correspondence at Jones Day after partner Kevin Orr had a unilateral conversation with associates about whether or not Jones Day would continue their anti-democratic fight to disabled voters in Pennsylvania. And an associate strongly objected to this. She was told, or the associates were told, they would have time to ask questions. Kevin Orr took no questions. And the associate wrote that, in part, quote, "From the outset, this petition was designed to suppress the vote to ensure that fewer of our American voices could be heard in the midst of a global pandemic," end quote. And after this email went out to all lawyers in the firm, Orr did take questions. There's been no additional word from the firm itself since its completely tone-deaf press release last week, written by lawyers and for lawyers. Clients are now questioning Jones Day and whether they want to be associated with a firm that is intentionally trying to suppress votes of African Americans and others. And the firm is in a deep world of reputational hurt, and they're only hurting themselves more as the days go by. And that brings us to our next story, where other firms have really awoken and realized that if you're going to go in and write fallacious petitions claiming fraud, you better have some evidence to back them up. Otherwise, you're going to be in deep trouble when you get into court. And the most notable of these to pull out has been Porter Wright, but there's also Snell Wilmer in Phoenix. So these law firms that have filed these petitions to try to overturn votes have come up with zero, and I mean zero, evidence of any fraud, and they're being excoriated by the courts. And as I mentioned in the prior article about Jones Day, clients are beginning to ask, do they want to be associated with law firms that not just represent companies or individuals have difficult cases such as death penalty cases, but really engage in and bring litigation which is designed to take away the most basic right to vote. From the Washington Post, an article on Robert Smith, the former most prominent black billionaire and who is now disgraced following admitting to criminal tax evasion and being able to get a DPA as the first guy in the door. And he talks about the mistakes he's made. He doesn't seem contrite at all because, after all, he's the billionaire and you're not. So it's going to be interesting to see if he's able to, the information he provides will bring down others who have made more money than him. But as for Mr. Smith leading any more compliance and ethics conferences, I hope that people will wake up, smell the roses, and see he ain't the guy. And our final story comes from Dylan Tokar over at the always great Wall Street Journal Risk and Compliance Journal, as we have finally Africa Resources, who were defrauded by what was then Och-Ziff and their payment of bribes to get contracts in Africa, is finally going to be compensated from the Victims' Rights Act. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.